The boot hit the chair like a shotgun blast. Ethan Cole slammed into the floor, shoulder first, his daughter's pink backpack skidding across beer-stained concrete. His lips split open. Blood filled his mouth. And Gunnery Sergeant Marcus Bull Donovan stood over him, laughing. "Stay down, Daddy Daycare. This bar is for warriors, not for guys who carry princess backpacks." Ethan didn't move. Not because he couldn't, because he was calculating 17 different ways to break this man apart, and choosing none of them. What Bull didn't know, what no one in that bar knew, was that the tired single dad bleeding on the floor had killed more enemies of the United States than anyone in the room combined. But tonight, the most dangerous man in San Diego had a reason not to fight back. And that reason was 6 years old, sleeping at a friend's house, clutching a stuffed bear named Mr. Pickles. Comment the city you're watching from, so I can see how far this story travels. And if this is your first time here, subscribe. You don't want to miss what happens next. Ethan Cole pushed open the door of the Anchor's Rest at 9:31 p.m. on a Thursday night, and the first thing that hit him was the smell. Old wood, stale beer, fried food, and something underneath all of it. Something that smelled like memory. Like the ghost of cigarette smoke from decades before the ban. Like the sweat of men who'd carried things they couldn't put down. He hadn't been here in 4 years, not since Rebecca died. The backpack strap dug into his shoulder. Pink, covered in little cartoon unicorns. Lily had picked it out herself at Target. Spent 20 minutes deciding between the unicorns and the one with butterflies. He'd told her she could have both. She'd looked at him like he'd offered her the moon and said, "Daddy, that's too much. One is enough." 6 years old, and already more disciplined than half the operators he'd commanded. He adjusted the strap and walked toward the back booth. The one against the far wall, underneath the old photo of the USS Missouri. His father's booth. Robert Cole had claimed that booth in 1991, fresh off a plane from Iraq, with sand still in his boots and shrapnel scars still pink on his forearms. He'd sat there with a cold Budweiser and told anyone who'd listen that the best beer in the world was the first one you drank when you came home alive. Ethan slid into the booth, set the pink backpack on the seat beside him. Lily's homework folder was sticking out the top. A math worksheet with a smiley face sticker and the words, "Great job, Lily," in red marker. He ordered a beer. Just one. He had to pick Lily up from Jessica's house by 7 tomorrow morning. Lily had been talking about the sleepover for 2 weeks straight. Her first one without calling him to come get her at midnight. "She's growing up, Daddy," Lily had told him, using the third person the way she did when she was being serious. "Lily is a big girl now." "Yeah," he'd said, swallowing something that felt like a fist in his throat. "Yeah, she is." He took a sip of beer, closed his eyes, let himself sit in the quiet. 3 weeks. That's how long it had been since Yemen, since the ambush, since Chen, Hayes, and Rodriguez bled out in sand that didn't care whose blood it drank. Since he'd made the call, abort mission, extract survivors, and save Jackson, Kim, and Williams, while 3 coffins flew home to families who'd never be whole again. 3 weeks since Admiral Garrett opened the investigation. 3 weeks of desk duty, mandatory counseling, whispered conversations that stopped when he walked past. 3 weeks of the same question in different mouths. Did Lieutenant Commander Ethan Cole crack under pressure? Did fatherhood make him soft? Did the single dad lose his nerve? The beer tasted like nothing. Everything tasted like nothing lately, except Lily's pancakes on Sunday morning, the ones she insisted on helping with, the ones that were always slightly burned on one side because she wouldn't let him flip them. Those tasted like everything. "You're in my seat." Ethan opened his eyes. The man standing over him was massive. 6 feet 3 inches, maybe 6 feet 4 inches, with a neck like a fire hydrant, and arms that strained the sleeves of a Marine Corps t-shirt that was probably one size too small, on purpose. His face was red. Not sunburned red, drunk red, whiskey red, the kind of red that came from a man who'd been performing for his audience all night and needed a new act. Behind him, 8 young Marines sat at a long table, pitchers of beer, empty shot glasses, the energy of young men feeding off the dominance of an older one. Disciples at the feet of a prophet who smelled like Jack Daniels and bad decisions. "I said you're in my seat." The man's voice was louder now, playing to the room. Ethan looked at him, measured him the way he'd been trained to measure threats in 14 countries. Weight distribution, slightly forward. Dominant hand, right. Alcohol level, high but functional. Ego level, off the charts. "I don't think these are assigned," Ethan said. "I'm Gunnery Sergeant Marcus Donovan." He said it like it was supposed to mean something, like the name itself should make Ethan move. "Been drinking in this bar for 6 years. That booth is mine. Everyone here knows it." "My father used to sit in this booth," Ethan said quietly. 30 years ago, when he came back from Desert Storm. I'm just having one beer." Bull's eyes dropped to the pink backpack, the unicorns, the homework folder with the smiley face sticker. Something shifted in his expression. Not recognition. Dismissal. The kind of instant categorization that small men use to feel tall. "Oh," Bull said, and the word dripped with contempt. "Oh, I see. You're one of those. Daddy's night out, huh? Wife finally let you off the leash for a couple hours?" "My wife died," Ethan said. 2 years ago." He didn't say it for sympathy. He said it because it was true, and because lies took energy he didn't have tonight. But Bull was already past the point where information could change his trajectory. He'd committed to the performance. His Marines were watching. The bar was watching. And Marcus Bull Donovan had never in his life backed down from a performance. "Well, that's real sad, buddy." Bull leaned forward. "But this ain't a support group. This is where warriors drink. Men who've seen combat. Men who've been in the real fight. Not guys who pack unicorn bags and tuck their kids in at night." "You done?" Ethan asked. "Am I done?" Bull laughed. It was an ugly sound, loud and hollow, and designed to fill space. He turned to his Marines. "You hear that? Daddy Daycare wants to know if I'm done." The Marines laughed. Not all of them. A couple of the younger ones shifted in their seats, uncomfortable. But most of them laughed, because that's what you did when Bull laughed. That's how it worked. "Move," Bull said. The word was hard. Final. "Now." "No." Bull blinked. It was clear this wasn't a word he heard often. His jaw tightened. His right hand flexed at his side. And then something behind his eyes made a decision that his brain would spend the rest of his life regretting. The boot connected with the chair leg. Not a kick aimed at Ethan. Aimed at the chair itself. Launched sideways with enough force to send it, and Ethan, crashing to the floor. Ethan hit the ground. His shoulder took the impact. His head missed the table's corner by 2 inches. The pink backpack tumbled off the seat and landed beside him, Lily's homework folder spilling out, the smiley face sticker looking up at the ceiling. The bar went dead silent. Every conversation stopped. Every glass froze. Even the jukebox seemed to hold its breath between songs. Bull stood over him, backlit by the neon Budweiser sign, laughing. Not nervous laughter, confident laughter. the laughter of a man who believed he'd just restored the natural order. "Stay down, Daddy Daycare." His voice carried across the bar like he was addressing a formation. "Next time, read the room before you bring your little girl's backpack into a place for real men." Ethan lay on the floor for exactly 3 seconds. In those 3 seconds, his mind did what it always did, what 15 years of SEAL training and 47 operations had wired it to do. It calculated. Bull's weight, approximately 240 pounds. Center of gravity, high, compromised by alcohol. Stance, wide but unbalanced. The gap-toothed smile. The way she said, "Daddy," like it was the most important word in the English language. The way she'd crawled into his bed at 3 a.m. 2 weeks ago and whispered, "Daddy, I dreamed you didn't come home." "I'll always come home," he'd told her. That was a promise. And Ethan Cole kept his promises. He stood up, slowly. His movements controlled, deliberate. His shoulder ached. His lip was split. He could taste copper, that familiar metallic tang he'd tasted in a dozen countries most Americans couldn't find on a map. His heart rate was 72 beats per minute, the same as when he'd been sitting in the booth, the same as in Yemen. "You should leave now, Gunnery Sergeant," Ethan said. His voice came out flat, calm, empty of everything Bull could use against him. Bull laughed harder. "Or what? You gonna call your babysitter? File a complaint? Go cry in your minivan?" "I'm asking you once. Walk away." "Walk away?" Bull took a step closer. His shadow fell across Ethan like a threat he didn't know he was making. "Buddy, you don't ask me to do anything. You don't tell me anything. You're nobody. You hear me? Nobody. Some sad sack single dad who wandered into the wrong bar with a pink backpack and a dead wife story." The words landed exactly where Bull intended them to land, and Ethan felt them. He was human. He felt them the way you feel a knife, sharp, specific, designed to wound. Dead wife. The words rang in his skull like a bell. But he'd been trained to compartmentalize, not to suppress, to acknowledge and set aside, to feel the pain and function through it, to carry the weight and keep walking. "I know you," Ethan said quietly. Bull's smile tightened. "What?" "Gunnery Sergeant Marcus Donovan, 16 years Marine Corps, 3 deployments. Camp Pendleton, 29 Palms, currently stationed at Miramar. Rifle qualification instructor. Never deployed to Fallujah despite what you tell people." The blood drained from Bull's face, fast, like someone pulled a plug. "Who the hell told you?" "You should walk away now," Ethan said again. Same words, same flat tone. Blood on his lip, Lily's pink backpack at his feet. While walking away is still an option you have. The bar was watching. Every single person in the Anchor's Rest was watching. And Bull Donovan, who had built his entire identity on never backing down, on being the biggest and loudest and most dominant force in every room, made the worst decision of his life. His hand shot out. Not a punch, a push. Dismissive, contemptuous. The kind of push you give to a piece of furniture that's in your way. Ethan saw it coming, read the weight shift, the shoulder telegraph, the micro-expression that preceded physical action. He saw it the way a chess grandmaster sees the board. Every possible response branching out like a decision tree. Block, counter, redirect momentum, sweep the leg, face down in 3 seconds. He chose none of them. The push connected with his chest, hard. Ethan let himself go with the force. Didn't resist. Let physics do its work. He hit the floor for the second time. From behind the bar, Pete Whitman watched. 68 years old, retired Navy corpsman. Vietnam, 1968 and 69. Owner of the Anchor's Rest since 1998. Pete had seen things that still woke him at 3 a.m., 56 years later. And he recognized something in the man's eyes as he stood up for the second time. Something familiar. Something controlled. Something extremely dangerous that was choosing, with enormous effort, not to be dangerous. That wasn't a soft man on the floor. That was a weapon with the safety on. Ethan stood up again, picked up the pink backpack, brushed it off carefully, checking that the homework folder was intact, that the smiley face sticker page wasn't bent. Then he set it gently on the booth seat. "You should leave now, Gunnery Sergeant," he said for the third time. Same words, same calm, blood on his lip, dignity intact. Bull opened his mouth to escalate, and the television saved him from himself. The bright red banner cut across the bottom of the screen. Breaking news. CNN's anchor voice sliced through the bar's silence. Active shooter situation at Naval Training Facility Coronado. Multiple hostages reported. All military personnel in the area advised to report immediately. The footage showed police cars, barricades, chaos. The facility was 5 minutes away. Bull's demeanor shifted instantly. The performance evaporated. The bully disappeared. The Marine returned, or what passed for a Marine, in a man who'd spent more time telling war stories than living them. "Marines, on me!" His voice had changed. Command voice, hard and real. "We've got personnel in danger. Let's move." His crew jumped up. They were good Marines, young, fit, trained. They weren't the problem. Their leadership was. Bull looked at Ethan one last time. The contempt was still there, but mixed with something else now. Pity. The reflexive assumption that this sad, bleeding, single dad would stay here where it was safe, while real men did real work. "Stay here with the backpack, Daddy," Bull said. "Hold down the booth. This is work for real warriors." He turned, led his Marines toward the door. 8 young men following one loud man into a situation none of them were prepared for. The door swung shut behind them. The bar stayed quiet for a moment. Then slowly, conversations resumed. Someone fed quarters into the jukebox. Creedence Clearwater Revival. Fortunate Son. Pete approached with a bar towel full of ice. Up close, he could see the details he'd missed from behind the bar. The scars on Ethan's knuckles. Not from bar fights, from breaching doors. The calluses on his hands. Not from typing, from weapons. The way his eyes tracked the door Bull had just exited through. Always calculating. Always processing. "You going to press charges?" Pete asked, handing him the ice. "No." "You should. I saw the whole thing. He assaulted you." I've got security camera footage." "I appreciate that." Ethan pressed the ice to his lip. "But I've got more important things to deal with tonight." He pulled out a phone. Not a personal cell. Military issue. Secure. He dialed a number from memory. A number he wasn't supposed to have anymore. A direct line he'd been ordered not to use while he was under investigation. The voice that answered was gravel and old oak and 30 years of carrying weight that never got lighter. "This is Cole." "Dad." Ethan's voice was steady, controlled. "I'm 5 minutes from the situation at the training facility. I'm responding." Silence on the other end. Then Master Chief Robert Cole, retired, spoke with the careful precision of a man who'd spent a lifetime choosing words that mattered. "Ethan, you're on administrative leave. You're not authorized for operational duty. The investigation isn't closed."
12 hostages, Dad. Active shooter, 5 minutes away. You really want to argue protocol while people die?
Another silence, longer this time. In that silence, Ethan could hear 30 years of his father's career, the echoes of decisions made under impossible pressure, the weight that never left, even after the uniform did. "You know what they'll say." Robert's voice was quiet now, father to son, not commander to operator. "They'll say you went rogue, ignored orders. They'll use this against you. Say you're unstable."
Same thing they said about you in 91.
The silence that followed was different, heavier. 33 years collapsed into nothing. The Gulf War, the court-martial, the decision that defined Robert Cole's career and nearly ended it. "Yeah," Robert said softly. "Same thing they said about me." A pause. "And I'd make the same choice again, every time."
"So would I."
"I know." Robert's voice shifted, harder, operational.
"Get there, but Ethan, listen to me. You're not in command.
You observe, you advise. You do not engage unless lives are at immediate risk. Are we clear?" Crystal. "And Ethan, don't make the loud choice. The right answer isn't always the obvious one." "I know, Dad. You taught me that." He hung up, looked at the pink backpack sitting in the booth. Lily's math homework with the smiley face. For a moment, just one moment, he let himself feel the weight of what he was about to do. If this went wrong, if the investigation used it against him, if he lost his career, Lily would grow up without a father who could provide. But if he didn't go, 12 people might not grow up at all. That wasn't a choice. That was arithmetic. He turned to Pete. "Can you hold this for me?" He held up the pink backpack. "It's my daughter's. I'll come back for it." Pete took the backpack, held it like it was something sacred. "Cole," he said slowly, "your father—"
"Is he Robert Cole? Master Chief Robert Cole?"
Ethan paused. "You know him?" Pete's hand went unconsciously to his left forearm. A scar ran from elbow to wrist. Faded white. 56 years old. "Vietnam, 1968, Hue City. I was 18. Navy corpsman attached to a Marine rifle company. We got hit bad. RPG turned our APC into a furnace. I was trapped inside with 2 Marines, both of them burning." Pete's voice went somewhere far away. "Your father was 20 years old. SEAL advisor. He pulled us out. Took shrapnel in 3 places doing it. Told me, 'Not today, Doc. Not on my watch.'" Pete's eyes were wet. Old ghosts. Old debts. He used to bring a little boy in here, 8, 9 years old. Sat in that same booth while Robert had a beer and told stories. Pete stared at Ethan. "That was you?" "That was me." Jesus Christ. Pete looked at the door Bull had exited through. That jarhead kicked Robert Cole's son to the ground, called him Daddy daycare. He didn't know.
Would it matter if he did? Ethan almost smiled. No, it wouldn't.
He headed for the door. Behind him, Pete called out, "Hey, you gonna be okay?" Ethan paused, looked back. His lip was still bleeding. His shoulder still ached. But his eyes were clear, steady, 72 beats per minute. "I'm a SEAL, Pete, not a victim. I'll be fine." "What about that gunnery sergeant? He's gonna feel pretty stupid when he finds out who you are." Ethan's expression shifted. Something cold moved behind his eyes. Something that would have made Bull Donovan very nervous if he'd seen it. "He's gonna feel a lot of things before tonight is over," Ethan said. "Stupid is probably the least of them." He walked out into the San Diego night, toward the sirens, toward the chaos, toward 12 people who didn't know yet that their lives depended on a single dad with a split lip and a heart rate that never changed. Behind him, Pete Whitman pulled out his own phone, scrolled to a number he hadn't called in 5 years. It rang 4 times. "This is Cole." "Robert, it's Pete Whitman from the Anchor's Rest." "Pete, Jesus, how long's it been?" "Too long. Listen, your son was just here. Some Marine gunnery sergeant put his hands on him, knocked him down twice, mocked him for carrying his daughter's backpack, called him Daddy Daycare." Absolute silence. Then, "Is he hurt?" Lip split, but Robert, he didn't fight back. He could have. I've seen enough combat veterans to know a trained killer when I see one. Your boy could have destroyed that man. But he just stood up, picked up his little girl's backpack, brushed it off, and walked away. Robert Cole was quiet for a long time. "He's under investigation," Robert said finally. "Any use of force, any aggressive response, they'll say he's too volatile, too unstable for command. That being a single father made him emotional." "That's horseshit." "That's the Navy. Did he file a complaint?" "He said no." "Well, I'm filing one anyway. I've got it on security camera, clear as day. Assault, witnessed by 15 people. "Pete, you don't have to." "Yes, I do. You saved my life in Hue. Your boy is about to save God knows how many lives at that training facility. The least I can do is make sure that jarhead answers for what he did." Pete paused. "What's his call sign?" "Ghost." Pete repeated it. "Ghost. That's a hell of a call sign." "He earned it," Robert said. 3 times over." Pete looked down at the pink backpack in his hands, the unicorns, the smiley face sticker, the math homework of a 6-year-old girl whose father was, at this very moment, running toward gunfire instead of away from it. He set the backpack carefully behind the bar, on the top shelf, where he kept the things that mattered. Fortunate Son played on, and the bar moved on, the way bars do. Next drink, next story, next moment. But Pete didn't forget. Pete never forgot. He'd been carrying debts since 1968, and tonight he was going to start paying one of them back. Ethan's truck hit the Naval Training Facility parking lot 4 minutes after leaving the Anchor's Rest. He could still taste blood. His lip had stopped bleeding, but the split was deep enough that every time he pressed his tongue against it, the copper came back. Good. Pain kept you honest. Pain reminded you that you were still in your body, still present, still functioning. He parked away from the main cluster of emergency vehicles and approached on foot. His mind was already running, processing layout, calculating angles, building 3-dimensional models of sight lines and entry points and fatal funnels, the way other people built grocery lists. 6 San Diego PD cruisers had formed a hasty perimeter. Officers crouched behind vehicles with weapons drawn but no clear target. Facility security personnel were arguing with police about jurisdiction, about protocols, about who owned a situation that was spiraling past anyone's ability to control it. And in the center of it all, Gunnery Sergeant Marcus "Bull" Donovan was already shouting like he'd been running this scene for hours instead of minutes. Ethan moved closer, close enough to hear the tactical radio chatter. The shooter had been identified as Derek Walsh, former Navy contractor, dishonorably discharged 3 months ago for reasons still classified. Barricaded in the command center with 12 hostages, mix of instructors and trainees, armed with an AR-15. Warning shots already fired. Demands incoherent, rambling. Something about betrayal and justice and things taken from him that he could never get back. Captain David Martinez of the San Diego Police Department stood behind his cruiser with a bullhorn. His voice was professional, but Ethan could hear the strain underneath. This was the kind of night that ended careers, or made them. And right now, it wasn't going well. Derek Walsh, this is Captain Martinez, San Diego Police. We have the building surrounded. Release the hostages and come out peacefully. No one needs to get hurt here. The response was a gunshot. It punched through one of the windows and embedded itself in the hood of Martinez's cruiser, 15 feet from where he stood. Martinez ducked hard. His hand shook slightly as he lowered the bullhorn. Bull pushed his way forward immediately. Captain Martinez, Gunnery Sergeant Marcus Donovan, United States Marine Corps. I've got 8 combat veterans here, all with active shooter training. We can breach that building and neutralize the threat in under 10 minutes. Martinez studied him, studied the 8 Marines behind him. Young faces, hard eyes. Good Marines following their NCO's lead. Gunnery Sergeant, I appreciate the offer, but we're waiting for FBI hostage rescue. ETA 40 minutes. 40 minutes? Bull's voice rose. Captain, you know how many people can die in 40 minutes? I've been in Fallujah, Ramadi, Helmand Province. I know how to handle armed combatants in confined spaces. My team can end this right now. Ethan almost said something, almost corrected the lie. Bull had never been to Fallujah, never been to Ramadi, never set foot in Helmand. But that wasn't the fight that mattered right now. He stepped into the conversation quietly. Captain Martinez. Bull whipped around. The recognition was instant, followed immediately by something between rage and disbelief. What the hell are you doing here? I told you to stay at the bar. You told me, Ethan said. I didn't agree to it. He turned to Martinez and pulled out his military ID. Not the standard card, the Special Operations ID that marked him as someone who wasn't supposed to exist in official records. Lieutenant Commander Ethan Cole, Naval Special Warfare Command, currently on administrative leave, but I'm trained in hostage rescue operations, and I'm familiar with this facility's layout. Martinez studied the ID, studied Ethan's face, the split lip, the faded hoodie, then looked at Bull and back again. You two know each other? We met, Ethan said. Bull laughed, that same ugly sound from the bar. Met? Captain, this guy was face down on a bar floor 20 minutes ago, learning a lesson about where he belongs. Now he shows up here pretending to be some kind of tactical expert? He turned back to Martinez. Don't waste your time. He's probably admin. Never seen real combat in his life. Just another sad story trying to feel important. I'm the person telling you that your breach plan is going to get your Marines killed, Ethan said. His voice stayed level, but there was something underneath now. Steel, cold and precise, and sharp enough to cut. Bull turned slowly. Say that again. The east entrance you're planning to use. It's a fatal funnel. The command center has direct line of sight down that entire hallway. Walsh will see your team coming from 50 feet away. He starts shooting before you reach the door. And when he starts shooting, he's not aiming at Marines. He's aiming at hostages. And you know this how? X-ray vision? I know this because I taught a close quarters combat course in this facility 6 months ago. I know every entrance, every corridor, every sightline in that building. Ethan pulled out his phone. The facility blueprint was already loaded. He downloaded it from the Naval database before leaving the bar. He held it out to Martinez. See this? The command center has reinforced doors, limited entry points. Whoever's inside has tactical advantage on anyone trying to breach frontally. But there's a maintenance access tunnel that runs underneath the facility. Old HVAC system from the 1980s. It's not on the modern security grid.
Nobody's thought about it in 20 years. Martinez leaned in. His expression shifted from skeptical to calculating.
A small team could insert through the tunnel, Ethan continued, position directly under the command center and breach from below while you create a distraction at the east entrance. Walsh's attention splits. That's when defensive positions collapse. Bull shook his head. Hard. That's movie nonsense. Real combat isn't about sneaking around in tunnels like some kind of spy. It's about overwhelming force and aggressive action. You hit them hard. You hit them fast. You don't give them time to think. We're not talking about enemy combatants in a war zone, Gunnery Sergeant. We're talking about 12 hostages and one shooter. One unstable, desperate man who's already fired warning shots. Overwhelming force doesn't make him surrender. It makes him start killing.
And your tunnel plan is based on what? Theory? Have you ever actually executed a hostage rescue?
Ethan met his eyes, held them. 47 times, all successful. 0 hostage casualties. The number landed like a grenade with the pin pulled. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Bull stared at him. Really looked at him for what might have been the first time all night. Faded hoodie. Split lip from where Bull had knocked him to the floor less than an hour ago. Dark circles under his eyes from 3 weeks of not sleeping, because dead men visited him every time he closed them. 47? Bull's voice had lost something. Not all its confidence, but some of its certainty. You expect me to believe that? How old are you? 32? 33? And you've done 47 hostage rescues? 34. 15 years active duty. 10 years with SEAL Team 7. Currently under investigation for tactical decisions made during a classified operation in Yemen 3 weeks ago.
Ethan's voice didn't waver, didn't rise, didn't need to.
I've done this work, Gunnery Sergeant. I know what I'm talking about. Martinez's radio crackled. Captain, subject is on the PA system again, making new demands. Walsh's voice came through, distorted but clear. Desperate, but controlled enough to be dangerous. You have 15 minutes to meet my demands, or I start executing hostages. 1 every 5 minutes after that. I'm not bluffing. I've got nothing left to lose. You took everything from me. Now I'm taking everything from you. The words hung in the cold night air. 15 minutes. 12 lives. Bull turned to Martinez. Captain, we're out of time. We need to move now. My plan works. I've executed similar operations in combat zones. Speed and violence of action. That's what ends these situations. These aren't combatants, Ethan cut in. They're civilian instructors and 18-year-old trainees. They're terrified. They don't know how to react under fire. You breach with guns blazing, you'll have hostages running into crossfire, stumbling into your Marines' line of fire. Walsh will use them as shields. It'll be a massacre. Then they should stay down, Bull snapped. Have you ever been zip-tied to a chair while a man with a rifle tells you he's going to kill you? Ethan asked quietly. Because I have. And I can tell you that stay down isn't a thought that occurs to you when bullets start flying. Panic takes over. Biology takes over. People run. People die. Martinez looked between them. The calculation was playing out on his face in real time. Bull had rank, experience, volume, physical presence. everything that looked like competence in a crisis. Ethan had a split lip, a hoodie, and a story about tunnels. But David Martinez was 52 years old, 23 years a cop, Desert Storm veteran, Army Ranger, class of '91, and something in Ethan Cole's quiet certainty, the absolute stillness of a man who'd done this 47 times before, spoke louder than Bull Donovan's volume had ever spoken about anything. "Commander Cole," Martinez said slowly, "your father, is he Robert Cole? Master Chief Robert Cole?" Ethan nodded. Martinez's expression changed. Something opened behind his eyes. Old memory. Old debt. "Baghdad Highway, 1991. Your father extracted my ranger squad when we were pinned down behind a burning Humvee. 8 of us. RPG Alley. Every other unit had written us off. Your father drove a stolen Iraqi truck through 300 meters of crossfire to reach us." Martinez's voice was thick now. "I owe him my life. I owe him 8 lives." Bull had gone pale. "Daniel Cole. Wait. Robert Cole. The Master Chief from Gulf War? The extraction on the highway?" Nobody answered him. Nobody needed to. Martinez turned to Ethan. "If you're half the operator your father was, your tunnel plan is our best option." He looked at Bull. "Gunnery Sergeant, prep your team for the east entrance. But you hold position until I give the green light. You do not breach until I say so. Is that understood?" "Captain, is that understood, Gunnery Sergeant?" Bull's jaw worked. "Understood." "Commander Cole, show me this tunnel. You've got 5 minutes." Ethan led Martinez to the facility's east side. The access point was exactly where the blueprint showed it, behind a locked gate marked "Authorized Personnel Only." The kind of gate that gets locked once and forgotten for decades. Ethan pulled out his multi-tool, had the lock open in 15 seconds. "You always carry lockpicks?" Martinez asked. "I carry tools that solve problems. Lockpicks solve locked doors." The tunnel entrance gaped below them. Narrow. Dark. The air coming up smelled like dust and old metal and decades of neglect. Martinez shined his flashlight down. The beam disappeared into nothing. "It's tight," he said. "My tactical team won't fit. They're all 200-pound guys in full gear." "I'll fit." "You're on leave. I can't authorize—" "Captain," Ethan's voice cut clean. "We don't have time for authorization debates. That tunnel leads directly under the command center. I can insert, position, and breach from below while Gunnery Sergeant Donovan creates his distraction at the east entrance. Walsh's attention will be divided. That's when we move. That's when everyone goes home." Martinez studied him. 34 years old, split lip, faded hoodie with what might have been a crayon stain on the sleeve. Under investigation for choosing his people over his mission. A single father whose daughter was asleep right now, clutching a stuffed bear, with no idea that her daddy was about to crawl through a tunnel toward a man with a rifle. "You've really done this 47 times?" "Yes, sir. And you're under investigation because in Yemen, I chose to save my surviving operators instead of completing a mission that would have required sacrificing them. Naval Command is deciding whether that was leadership or cowardice." "What do you call it?" Ethan was quiet for a moment. "The only choice I could live with. The only choice that let me go home and look my daughter in the eye." Martinez nodded slowly. "Okay. But I want body camera footage. Everything recorded. Every second." "Yes, sir." "And, Commander, for what it's worth, choosing your people over the mission isn't cowardice. It's leadership. Your father taught me that 33 years ago, on a highway in Baghdad. Ethan's throat tightened. He nodded once. Then he lowered himself into the tunnel, into the darkness, into the tight, suffocating space that smelled like dust and rust and forgotten things. 3 feet wide, maybe 4 feet tall. He had to crouch, duck walking forward, using his phone's flashlight to navigate. Every 10 feet he counted steps, checked his internal map against physical reality. His heart rate held steady, 72 beats per minute. He thought about Lily, about the way she'd looked at him this afternoon when he dropped her off at Jessica's house. She'd been wearing her favorite yellow dress, the one Rebecca had bought 3 months before the cancer took her. It was getting too small. Lily was growing out of everything her mother had ever touched. "Daddy, will you be okay tonight? All by yourself?" "I'll be fine, sweetheart." "Promise?" "Promise." She'd hugged him so tight. 6 years old, and she hugged like she was trying to hold the whole world together. Because in her world, he was the whole world. The only parent she had left. The only constant in a life that had already taught her that people you love can disappear. He kept moving. The tunnel pressed in around him. Claustrophobia wasn't something SEALs were allowed to have. But the darkness had its own weight, its own pressure. And right now that pressure was mixing with something else. The memory of another tight space. A different darkness. Yemen. The crawl through collapsed rubble, while Chen screamed on the radio that Hayes was hit, that Rodriguez wasn't breathing, that the whole operation had gone sideways, and they needed to get out. Now. Right now. Please God, Commander, get us out. Ethan stopped, closed his eyes. 1 breath. 2. Not Yemen. San Diego. Different tunnel. Different mission. Same operator. He opened his eyes and kept moving. Above him, through the concrete and tile, he could hear something. Footsteps. A voice. Walsh. "I know you're out there. I know you're planning something. Don't test me. I'll kill them. I swear to God, I'll kill them all." A woman's voice, trembling so badly the words barely held together. "Please, just let us go. We haven't done anything." "Shut up. Everyone shut up. I need to think. I just need to think." Ethan's hands tightened against the concrete. 12 people up there. 12 people whose families were gathering in the parking lot right now. 12 people who had no idea that their survival had come down to a single dad in a hoodie crawling through a forgotten tunnel because the loudest man on scene was about to get them killed. His phone buzzed. Text from Martinez. "Gunnery sergeant in position at east entrance, awaiting your signal." Ethan texted back. "Ready. Execute on my mark. Tell him to hold until I signal. Not before." He found the access hatch. Old maintenance panel. 4 bolts, rusted but not frozen. He loosened them one by one, working fast but silent. His fingers moved with the precision of a man who'd done this kind of work in the dark more times than he could count. First bolt. Free. Second bolt. Free. Third bolt. Stubborn. He applied steady pressure, felt it give, felt the tiny grind of metal on metal that sounded enormous in the silence of the tunnel. Fourth bolt. Free. The hatch was ready. His phone buzzed again. Martinez. "Gunnery sergeant says he's breaching in 30 seconds. He won't hold. Says situation is deteriorating. I ordered him to wait. He's not listening. Move now." Ethan stared at the screen. Bull was going to breach. Without the signal. Without coordination. Without any idea that Ethan was in position beneath the command center floor. ready to end this quietly. Bull Donovan was going to kick down the door the same way he'd kicked Ethan's chair. Loud, aggressive, certain he was right. And 12 people were going to pay for it. Ethan closed his eyes. One breath. Heart rate settled at 72. He thought about Lily, about the promise he'd made. Then he pushed the hatch up half an inch, peered through the gap. Walsh stood near the east wall, rifle aimed at the door. His back was to the floor where Ethan lay. The hostages were clustered in the far corner. 12 people, zip-tied, sitting on cold tile, faces wet with tears they were too afraid to wipe away. 10 seconds. If he moved now while Bull breached simultaneously, there were too many variables. But the alternative was Bull's plan alone, and Bull's plan was a guaranteed bloodbath. 5 seconds. Ethan pushed the hatch fully open and pulled himself up in one smooth motion. His boots hit tile without a sound. Walsh was still focused on the door. 3, 2. The east door exploded inward. Bull's voice hit the room like a freight train. Go, go, go! Walsh's rifle swung toward the door. His finger found the trigger. His entire body oriented toward the breach point, toward the noise, the threat, the Marines pouring through his line of sight exactly the way Ethan had predicted. And in that half second of redirection, Ethan moved. Not running, flowing. The way water moves through a crack in a dam. Inevitable, unstoppable, guided by physics and 15 years of training that had rewritten his nervous system at the cellular level. 15 feet. Walsh's peripheral vision caught movement. His head started to turn. Too late. 3 weeks of adrenaline, 3 weeks of ghosts, 3 weeks of unanswered questions about Yemen. All of it compressed into a single explosive instant of controlled violence. Ethan's shoulder drove into Walsh's ribs. Not a tackle, a collision engineered to redirect momentum, to separate the weapon from the shooter, to take away options before the brain could generate them. His left hand found the rifle barrel, pushed it upward. The weapon discharged twice. 2 rounds punching through ceiling tiles, raining dust and debris down on them like dirty snow. The sound was enormous in the enclosed space, but Ethan didn't hear it. Not really. In the zone, sound became information, not sensation. 2 rounds, upward trajectory, no hostage risk. Continue. Walsh tried to wrench the rifle free. Strong, desperate. The strength of a man with nothing to lose and everything to prove. But desperation was sloppy. Desperation was predictable. And Ethan had been training against desperation since he was 19 years old. He stepped inside Walsh's reach, nullified the leverage, delivered a precise strike to the throat. Not a punch, a controlled impact, just enough force to disrupt breathing without crushing the windpipe. Walsh's grip loosened, his mouth opened. His eyes went wide with the sudden terrifying realization that he couldn't breathe. Joint lock on the right arm, controlled rotation. Walsh's body followed his arm to the ground because the alternative was a dislocated shoulder. Face down on the tile. Ethan's knee in his back. Zip ties around his wrists before Walsh's brain had finished processing what had just happened. 8 seconds, start to finish. Bull burst through the door with 3 Marines behind him. Weapons up, fingers on triggers, ready for a firefight that was already over. They froze. The shooter was face down on the floor. The single dad from the bar. The one Bull had kicked to the ground. The one he'd called Daddy Daycare. The one with a pink unicorn backpack. Was kneeling on Walsh's back with zip ties secured. The AR-15 cleared and set aside. His breathing steady. His hands rock solid. Bull lowered his weapon slowly. His mouth opened. Nothing came out. He tried again. "What? How did you?" Ethan didn't answer. He finished checking Walsh for secondary weapons, found a handgun in his waistband, cleared it, set it 3 feet from the rifle. Only then did he stand. "Situation is secure, Gunnery Sergeant. You can lower your weapons. The hostages are safe." His voice was the same voice from the bar. Flat, calm, 72 beats per minute, as if he'd just finished filling out a form instead of neutralizing an armed shooter in less time than it took most people to tie their shoes. Martinez appeared in the doorway, took in the scene. Walsh on the floor, Ethan standing over him, the hatch still open in the floor. Bull and his Marines frozen in a breach formation that had nothing left to breach. "Commander Cole," Martinez said carefully, "did you just—" "Neutralize the threat and secured the hostages, sir. 0 casualties. Subject is restrained and ready for transport." Martinez looked at Walsh on the floor, looked at the rifle, looked at the open hatch, looked at Ethan standing there in his faded hoodie with blood still drying on his split lip. "How long were you in position before you moved?" "Approximately 90 seconds, sir." "And you waited until the gunnery sergeant breached because his breach created the distraction I needed." Walsh's attention was divided. "That's when defensive positions are weakest. That's when you move." Bull found his voice. It came out strangled, like something was caught in his throat that he couldn't swallow and couldn't spit out. "You used my team as bait." "I used your breach as tactical advantage. Same principle military operations have used for centuries. Create noise at the front door. Enter through the floor." Ethan met his eyes. "It worked. Everyone's alive. That's what matters." "You could have told me. Could have coordinated." "I texted Captain Martinez multiple times asking you to hold position. You breached anyway. If you'd waited like you were ordered, I could have taken Walsh without a single shot fired. Your early breach forced me to move during a more dangerous window." Ethan paused, let the words land. "Everyone's alive, Gunnery Sergeant, but they're alive despite your breach, not because of it." The truth hung between them like smoke. EMTs pushed into the room. Ethan turned away from Bull and went to the hostages. Knelt beside them, cut their zip ties one by one. Spoke to each person quietly, individually, the way you speak to someone who's just been pulled back from the edge. "You're safe now. Medical is here. Your families are outside." A young trainee, couldn't have been more than 19, hands shaking so badly he couldn't stand on his own, grabbed Ethan's arm. "Thank you. I thought we were all going to die. When we heard the gunshots, I thought—" "You're okay," Ethan said. His voice was gentle now, a different voice than the one he'd used on Bull. The voice of a man who had a 6-year-old at home and knew how to talk to people who were scared. "You're going to walk outside and see a lot of lights and a lot of people. Your family might be there. If they're not, someone will call them. You're going to be fine." "Who are you?" Ethan almost smiled. "Nobody important. Just the guy who was in the right place." As the EMTs led the hostages out, one of them, a female instructor, mid-40s, mascara streaked down her face, stopped in front of Ethan. "You came through the floor," she said. "I saw you. You just appeared. Like a ghost." "That's the idea, ma'am." "He was going to kill us. When he heard the door, he turned the gun toward us first. Not toward the door, toward us. If you hadn't been there at that exact second—" "But I was. And you're going home tonight. That's all that matters." She squeezed his hand, hard. Then she walked out, and Ethan stood alone in the command center for a moment. Just a moment. He looked at the open hatch in the floor, the tunnel he'd crawled through, the darkness he'd moved through with Lily's face in his mind and 72 beats per minute in his chest. Then he walked outside. Bull was standing in the parking lot, not with his Marines, alone, staring at nothing. One of his men, Lance Corporal Jake Davis, approached him quietly. "Gunny."
Who the hell is she? I mean, who is he?
Bull didn't answer for a long time. Then in a voice Davis had never heard from him before, stripped of swagger, stripped of volume, stripped of everything that wasn't raw, uncut honesty. "I have no idea, but I kicked that man to the floor of a bar 90 minutes ago, mocked his dead wife, laughed at his kid's backpack, called him Daddy Daycare." Bull's voice cracked, and he just saved 12 lives while I watched. Davis whistled low. "That's going to be awkward in the debrief." "Yeah," Bull said. "Yeah, it is." The debrief started 40 minutes later. They'd set up in the facility's main conference room. Stale coffee, stress sweat, the particular fluorescent misery of a government room at midnight. Ethan sat at one end of the long table. Bull sat at the other, as far away as the room allowed. Between them, Captain Martinez, an FBI special agent named Carr, and a Navy JAG officer with a briefcase full of documents. And at the head of the table, Admiral Kenneth Garrett, 64 years old, the man who'd been Ethan's commanding officer, the man who'd opened the Yemen investigation, the man who would decide whether Ethan Cole still had a career. His presence meant this wasn't just a debrief. This was judgment. "Let's establish the timeline," Martinez began. At 21:47 hours, active shooter reported. 12 hostages confirmed. At 21:53, Gunnery Sergeant Donovan arrived on scene and proposed immediate breach through the east entrance. Bull sat straighter. "Correct, Captain. I assessed the situation and determined that aggressive action was necessary. Standard protocol. Every minute of delay was a minute the shooter could harm hostages." "And Commander Cole arrived when?" 21:56 hours, Ethan said quietly. 3 minutes after the gunnery sergeant. "I proposed the tunnel approach based on my knowledge of the facility layout." Bull scoffed. He proposed a theory, a plan he'd never tested in this specific building. "My approach was proven. Speed and aggression. Overwhelm the shooter's position before he can react." "Walsh wasn't enemy military," Ethan said. "He was a distressed civilian with a weapon. Different psychology requires different tactics." Bull slammed his hand on the table. "Your tunnel crawl could have gotten you killed. You went in alone, unarmed, no backup, no extraction plan if things went sideways." "I went in with a plan, Gunnery Sergeant. You went in with noise." Special Agent Carr cleared his throat. "For the record, the body camera footage shows Commander Cole's approach was methodical and controlled. He neutralized the threat in 8 seconds with 0 casualties, 0 shots fired by friendly forces. The only rounds discharged came from the subject's weapon, directed at the ceiling during the struggle." "He got lucky," Bull insisted. "The whole thing could have gone different." "Could have, but didn't." Admiral Garrett's voice cut through the room like a blade dropped on glass. "Because Commander Cole read the situation correctly and executed with precision." Garrett stood, moved to the wall monitor, pulled up a file. Bull's face went white. "Gunnery Sergeant, what was your team's position when the shots were fired?" Bull hesitated. "We were breaching the east entrance." "Without authorization from Captain Martinez." "The situation was deteriorating. I made a judgment call." "You ignored a direct order to hold position," Martinez interrupted. "I specifically told you to wait for my signal. You acknowledged that order, and then you breached anyway." "Because waiting was getting people killed." "No one was killed," Ethan said quietly. "No one was even injured, except the subject, who has a bruised throat and a sore shoulder." 12 hostages walked out on their own 2 feet. Bull turned on him. You don't get to sit there calm as Sunday morning, acting like you're better than everyone in this room. You went rogue. You crawled through a tunnel without authorization. You engaged without clearance. You— Finish that sentence, Gunnery Sergeant. Garrett's voice dropped to a register that made the temperature in the room fall 10 degrees. Please, I'd like to hear you explain how the man who saved 12 lives tonight went rogue, while the man who disobeyed a direct order was following protocol. Bull's mouth closed. Garrett pulled up another file, then another. Bull's eyes widened with each one. Let me provide some context for this room, Garrett said. Lieutenant Commander Ethan Cole, Naval Academy graduate, top of his class. SEAL qualification at age 24. Assigned to Team 7 at 25. Promoted to Lieutenant Commander at 30 after 47 successful operations. 0 friendly casualties across all 47. Silence. 47. Bull's voice was barely a whisper. That wasn't a lie. No, Gunnery Sergeant, it was not. Garrett pulled up more documents, mission reports, commendations, things that most people in the room didn't have the clearance to see, but that Garrett was showing them anyway because the moment demanded it. Commander Cole has conducted hostage rescues in 14 countries, advanced close quarters battle certification, tactical psychology, crisis negotiation. He speaks 4 languages fluently. Expert marksman rating with 7 weapon systems. Garrett paused. Let the next part land with its full weight. His resting heart rate under operational conditions averages 78 beats per minute. During tonight's tunnel insertion, his body camera recorded a consistent 72. During the physical takedown of the subject, his heart rate was 75. That's not possible, Bull whispered. It is. I've reviewed biometric data from 11 of his operations. Commander Cole's physiological response under fire is among the lowest ever recorded in naval special warfare history. Martinez whistled low. Garrett continued. Not louder. Quieter. Because what came next didn't need volume. 3 weeks ago, Yemen. Commander Cole's team encountered an ambush resulting from faulty intelligence. 3 operators killed, Corporals Chen, Hayes, and Rodriguez. 3 survived, Jackson, Kim, and Williams. Commander Cole ordered mission abort and emergency extraction. Saved the 3 survivors at the cost of the mission objective. Garrett's eyes found Ethan's. Naval Command opened an investigation into whether Commander Cole's decision reflected sound tactical judgment or emotional compromise. Bull looked confused. Why investigate saving your own people? Because the mission objective was a high-value intelligence target. Some in command questioned whether Commander Cole hesitated because of the casualties, whether he was too emotional, whether being a single father had made him soft. The word landed in the room like a slap. I've spent 3 weeks reviewing that operation, Garrett continued. I've interviewed the surviving operators. I've analyzed the tactical situation from every conceivable angle, consulted with 4 independent military strategists, and I've reached a conclusion. He paused. The room held its breath. Commander Cole made the only correct decision. Pushing forward would have resulted in total loss of the team with no guarantee of mission success. He saved 3 lives at the cost of 1 intelligence opportunity. That is leadership. Not weakness, not softness, not emotional compromise. Garrett looked directly at Ethan. The investigation is closed. You're cleared, Commander. Fully vindicated. Ethan didn't move, didn't speak. Something shifted behind his eyes. Something that might have been relief, or might have been grief, or might have been the particular exhaustion of a man who'd been carrying an impossible weight for 3 weeks and just felt the first ounce lift. But Bull wasn't done processing. He was staring at Ethan with an expression that was part horror, part shame, and part the dawning recognition of exactly how wrong a man could be about another man. "You're a SEAL commander," Bull said. "An actual SEAL commander." "Yes. And at the bar, I called you Daddy Daycare. I kicked your chair out from under you. I put you on the floor, twice. I mocked your dead wife." "Yes. Why didn't you fight back?" Ethan met his eyes, held them. "Because I'm under investigation. Any use of force would have been used as evidence that I'm unstable, that fatherhood made me emotional, that a single dad can't command SEALs." He paused. "And because my daughter needs a father with a career, more than I needed to prove I could beat you in a bar fight." Bull put his head in his hands. His massive shoulders, the shoulders of a man who'd built his entire identity on being the biggest, most dominant presence in every room, curved inward, made him small. "Oh God," he said. "What did I do?" "You were a bully," Garrett said flatly. "You saw a man sitting alone with a child's backpack. You assumed he was weak. You used your size and your rank and your volume to intimidate him. And when intimidation didn't work, you escalated to physical violence." "Yes, sir. That's exactly what I did." "Why?" Bull was quiet for a long moment. The kind of quiet that comes when a man is being honest with himself for the first time in years and doesn't like what he's finding. "Because he didn't react the way people react to me," Bull said finally. "People laugh at my jokes. They defer to my experience. They move when I tell them to move." He just sat there, calm, with that pink backpack, drinking his beer like I didn't matter, like everything I am didn't matter. His voice cracked. "It made me angry, because if he didn't need to be afraid of me, then maybe I wasn't what I've been telling everyone I am." "So you kicked him." "So I kicked him." Bull looked at Ethan. His eyes were red, wet. "I'm sorry. I'm sorry for the bar, for the things I said about your wife, for putting my hands on you, for everything." "Accepted," Ethan said. "That's not how this works," Garrett said. "An apology doesn't close the file, Gunnery Sergeant." Pete Whitman, the bartender, filed a formal complaint 30 minutes after the incident. Security camera footage included, clear as day. Additionally, 3 of your own lance corporals provided independent statements confirming the assault. Bull nodded. He didn't argue, didn't deflect, just nodded. "You're being reassigned to Quantico. Training instructor, 18 months. No deployments, mandatory bias training, and behavioral counseling. And Gunnery Sergeant, if I ever hear of you putting your hands on another service member, for any reason, in any context, you will face court-martial. Clear?" "Crystal clear, Admiral." The door opened. Ethan stood before anyone else, because he'd know those footsteps anywhere. 20 years of hearing them in hallways and on tarmacs and in hospitals and across the kitchen floor at 5 a.m. when the coffee was still brewing and the world was still quiet. "Dad." Master Chief Robert Cole, retired, stepped into the room. 61 years old, gray hair in a high and tight that hadn't changed in 40 years. Eyes that track movement the way a hawk tracks a mouse. Not aggressive, just aware. Always aware. His gaze swept the room, landed on Bull, stayed there for 2 seconds, then moved to Garrett. "Admiral, been a long time." Garrett smiled, the first real smile of the night. "Master Chief, 33 years since the court-martial. You were the JAG officer who cleared my name. And now I'm clearing your son's." Robert moved to stand beside Ethan, put a hand on his shoulder. The grip was firm, steady. The grip of a man who'd held that shoulder when it was small enough to fit in one hand, who'd taught that shoulder how to carry weight it shouldn't have had to carry. "Captain Martinez called you?" Ethan asked. "He did. Told me what happened, both at the bar and here." Bull had gone very still. "Master Chief Cole," he said, "from the Gulf War, the extraction on Baghdad Highway." Robert turned to look at him, not with anger, not with contempt, with something worse, understanding. "You know about that?" "Every Marine knows that story, sir. You disobeyed orders to save your team, faced court-martial, got cleared because you made the right call." Bull's voice was thick. "I've told that story 100 times, used it to explain what real courage looks like."
Did you learn anything from it? The question was quiet, simple, devastating. Bull's face crumbled. Every wall he'd ever built, every performance he'd ever given, every lie he'd ever told about Fallujah and Ramadi and being in the real fight. All of it collapsed at once under the weight of that simple question from the man whose story he'd been borrowing for years. "Not enough, sir," Bull whispered. "Not nearly enough." Robert studied him, not judging, measuring. The way you measure a man not by what he's done, but by what he's capable of becoming. "You know the difference between you and the officers who investigated me in '91? They were so sure they were right that they couldn't see any other possibility. They looked at my decision and saw weakness because they'd already decided what strength looked like." Robert's voice was steady, unhurried, the voice of a man who'd earned the right to speak slowly. "At least you're capable of recognizing when you're wrong. That's more than some people manage in a lifetime." "Thank you, sir. That's more grace than I deserve." "Grace isn't about deserving," Robert said. "It's about choosing to be better than the worst thing you've done. Can you do that?" "I'm going to try, sir. I swear I'm going to try." "Then that's enough, for now." Bull straightened, looked at Ethan one more time, opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. "Commander, your daughter, the one with the pink backpack." Ethan's jaw tightened, slightly, just enough. "What about her?" "How old is she?" 6. "What's her name?" Ethan studied Bull's face, looking for mockery, finding none. Just a broken man trying to understand the full scope of what he'd done. "Lily." Bull nodded, swallowed hard. "I mocked a SEAL commander's dead wife and his 6-year-old daughter's backpack. Then I watched that same man save 12 lives without raising his heart rate." He looked at Garrett. "Admiral, whatever punishment you've outlined isn't enough. I need you to know that I know that." "Noted, Gunnery Sergeant. Dismissed." Bull walked to the door, stopped, turned back to Ethan. "Commander, when you were on that floor, both times, your eyes never changed. I thought it was shock. I thought you were frozen. But that wasn't it, was it?" "No." "You were deciding not to hurt me." "Yes." "Every second I was standing over you, you could have—" "Yes." Bull's breath came out shaky. "I've never been more wrong about anyone in my life." "Then use that," Ethan said, "at Quantico, when you're standing in front of recruits. Tell them what happened tonight. Not the version that makes you look good. The real version. The one where you kicked the single dad to the ground because his daughter's backpack had unicorns on it. And then tell them what that single dad did 90 minutes later. That's not a story that makes me look like anything but a fool." "No, it's a story that makes you look human, and that's more useful to those recruits than every war story you've ever told, especially the ones that aren't true." Bull flinched, hard. "I wasn't in Fallujah," he said quietly. "I know you know. I wasn't in Ramadi either. Camp Pendleton. Rifle qualifications. 8 years I've been lying about it." "Then stop lying.
You've got 16 years of real service. Honorable service. That's enough. It was always enough. You just didn't believe it." Bull extended his hand. Ethan took it. "Thank you, Commander. For tonight. For this. For not destroying me when you had every reason to. Go teach those recruits something real, Gunnery Sergeant." Bull left. His shoulders were different. Not slumped, not defeated. Just honest. The shoulders of a man carrying his actual weight instead of performing someone else's. The room emptied slowly. Martinez shook Ethan's hand. Carr collected his files. The JAG officer closed his briefcase. Garrett remained. So did Robert. The Admiral pulled up one more document on the monitor. Ethan hadn't expected it, hadn't been prepared for it. And when Garrett began to read, Ethan's 72 beats per minute finally, for the first time all night, began to climb. "I received letters," Garrett said, "from the families of your fallen operators." Ethan stopped breathing. "Captain Elena Hayes, widow of Corporal Michael Hayes." Garrett read from the screen. "My husband's last letter mentioned Commander Cole. He said he was the best commander he'd ever served under. He said Commander Cole made decisions based on keeping the team alive, not on ego or ambition. He said if anything happened to him, it would be bad luck or bad intelligence, never bad leadership." Robert's hand tightened on Ethan's shoulder. "Mrs. Hayes continues," Garrett said. "Commander Cole's decision to abort destroyed him. I could hear it in his voice when he called me. But it was the right decision. If he'd pushed forward, I wouldn't be burying one husband. I'd be reading about 6 coffins. He saved 3 men by having the courage to stop. That's not cowardice. That's the hardest kind of bravery there is." Ethan's eyes burned. His throat closed. He pressed his fingers against his leg until the pressure grounded him, until the room stopped tilting. "The other families wrote similar letters," Garrett said quietly. "Rodriguez's mother, Chen's wife and parents. They don't blame you, Commander. They thank you." Robert pulled his son's shoulder closer. Not a hug, not here, not in front of an admiral. Just pressure, presence, the language fathers and sons speak when words are too small for what needs to be said. Ethan nodded. Once. It was all he could manage. "Now," Garrett said, closing the file, "about your next assignment." Garrett offered 2 folders, set them on the table side by side. One thick, one thin, both stamped with classification markings that meant whatever was inside them would shape the next chapter of Ethan Cole's life. "Option 1, Garrett said. SEAL Team 7, Executive Officer, full operational command under Commander Wilson. You'd deploy within 60 days, back in the field, back doing what you've spent 15 years training to do." Ethan looked at the thick folder, didn't touch it. "Option 2, Fort Bragg, Special Warfare Center, Instructor Position, Advanced Tactical Decision-Making, 2-year rotation. You'd be teaching the next generation of special operators, Army, Navy, all branches, how to think under pressure, how to make the calls nobody wants to make." Ethan looked at the thin folder, didn't touch that one either. "Take the night," Garrett said. "Sleep on it. Give me an answer by—" "Fort Bragg." Garrett stopped. Robert's hand fell away from Ethan's shoulder. Both men stared at him. "Say that again?" Garrett said. "Fort Bragg, sir. The teaching position." "Commander, Team 7 is the assignment every SEAL officer in the Navy would kill for. You're being offered executive officer after being cleared of an investigation. That's not just a second chance. That's a promotion. That's the brass telling the entire special warfare community that you were right." "I understand that, sir." "Then why teaching?" Ethan was quiet for a moment. Not because he didn't have an answer, because the answer mattered too much to rush. 3 weeks ago, in Yemen, I made a decision that saved 3 lives and ended an investigation. Tonight, I crawled through a tunnel and saved 12 more. That's 15 people who are going home to their families." He paused. "But if I go back to Team 7, the most I can do is lead one team on one mission at a time. One set of decisions. One set of lives." "And at Fort Bragg?" "At Fort Bragg, I teach 500 operators how to make those decisions for themselves."
Every one of them goes back to their unit carrying what I taught them. They pass it on. They teach their subordinates. Those subordinates teach theirs. Ethan met Garrett's eyes. "That's not addition, sir. That's multiplication. Every life I save in the field is one life. Every operator I teach to think correctly under pressure saves dozens of lives I'll never know about." Garrett leaned back, studied Ethan with an expression that was part admiration and part recognition. The look of a man watching someone arrive at a conclusion it had taken him 30 years to reach. "Your father said the exact same thing to me in 1996, almost word for word, when I tried to pull him back to Team 3. Robert smiled. The small, private smile of a father watching his son become something better than he'd been. "He chose teaching," Garrett continued. "Best decision he ever made. 312 operators trained under Master Chief Robert Cole. Hundreds of lives saved because those operators knew how to think, not just shoot." "I want to do the same thing, sir," Ethan said. "I want to make sure the next generation of commanders doesn't have to learn the lessons I learned in Yemen by losing people. I can't prevent bad intelligence. I can't stop ambushes. But I can teach them how to make impossible choices when everything goes wrong. That's worth more than any single mission." Garrett nodded slowly. "Approved. 2-year assignment, starting in 14 days. He paused. "But Commander, in 2 years, you're coming back to operations. The Navy needs you in the field." "Yes, sir. I'll be ready." Garrett gathered his folders, shook both their hands, and left. The conference room was empty now, except for father and son, and the ghosts that always traveled with them. "You okay?" Robert asked. 3 weeks ago, I lost 3 operators. Tonight, I saved 12. And somehow that's supposed to balance out." Ethan looked at his father. "Does it?" Robert didn't answer right away. He sat down, rubbed his face with both hands. When he spoke, his voice came from somewhere deep, somewhere old, somewhere he didn't visit often because the rent was too high. August 12th, 1991, Iraq. Bad intel put my team in an impossible position. Enemy battalion instead of a small outpost. 3 men down in the first 60 seconds. I had 6 operators left, including me. 2 choices: push forward and try to complete the mission, or abort and get my people out. You chose extraction. I know the story. You know the version I tell. You don't know all of it." Robert's eyes were distant. Our commanding officer, Lieutenant Commander Parks, disagreed with my call. When I ordered extraction, he went forward alone. Said someone had to complete the mission, even if I wouldn't. He got captured. Tortured for 3 days before Delta pulled him out. Ethan went still. "You never told me that." Parks never spoke to me again. Testified at my court-martial that I was a coward, that my extraction order is what got him captured, that if I'd pushed forward with the team, we could have overwhelmed the enemy position, and no one would have been taken. Was he right? No. The tactical analysis proved he was wrong. Pushing forward would have gotten all of us killed or captured. Parks survived because he got lucky, not because he made the right call. Robert's voice was steady, but Ethan could hear the old pain underneath, like a fracture that had healed, but still ached when the weather changed. But here's the thing.
Parks lived until 2019, had a wife, 3 kids, 8 grandchildren. I went to his funeral. He forgave you? No. His son told me Parks spent 30 years angry about it. 30 years convinced I was a coward who'd left him behind. Robert paused. But his son also said Parks had 30 years he wouldn't have had if I'd insisted we all die together. 3 kids who exist because their fathers survived. 8 grandchildren who are alive right now because I made a call that cost me a friendship and nearly cost me my career. Did that help, knowing that? No. Robert's honesty was blunt, unflinching, the way he'd raised Ethan to be. But it helped me understand something important. The weight doesn't go away. You don't wake up one morning and find it gone. You just learn to carry it. You learn that carrying it is the job. That the weight is what keeps you honest, keeps you careful, keeps you making the right call instead of the easy one. Chen, Hayes, Rodriguez, Ethan said. They're not going away. No, and they shouldn't. They deserve to stay with you. They deserve to matter. The day you stop thinking about them is the day you shouldn't be in command anymore. Robert leaned forward. But don't let the ghosts stop you from saving the living, Ethan. That's the balance. Honor the fallen by protecting those who remain. That's what you did tonight. That's what you'll do at Fort Bragg. Ethan nodded. His throat was tight. His eyes burned. He didn't try to hide it. Not from his father. Not from the only person in the world who understood this weight, because he'd been carrying his own version of it for 33 years. The families wrote letters supporting me, Ethan said. They did more than that. They called me. All 3 families. Chen's wife, Hayes's widow, Rodriguez's mother. Robert's voice thickened. They told me they were grateful you were the one commanding that mission. That if their sons had to die, at least they died under a commander who tried to save them, instead of one who would have sacrificed them. That doesn't bring them back. No, but it means you honored them by saving who you could. And that's not nothing, son. That's not nothing. They sat together in the empty conference room for a while, not talking, just breathing, father and son, carrying parallel weights across 33 years of history, connected by a bloodline that ran through tunnels and deserts and impossible choices. Ethan's phone buzzed. A text from Jessica, Lily's sleepover host. Lily's fast asleep. She told Mr. Pickles that her daddy is the bravest person in the whole world. Thought you should know. Ethan stared at the screen until the words blurred. Come on, Robert said, standing. Let's go home. I'll cook. They drove separately. Ethan followed his father's truck through San Diego streets that looked different now than they had 3 hours ago. The same streets, the same lights, the same ocean air coming through the cracked window. But he was different. 3 hours ago, he'd been a man under investigation, sitting in a dead booth with a split lip and a pink backpack. Now he was cleared, vindicated, offered a future. And 3 people were still dead. That was the thing about being a commander. The wins and the losses lived in the same body. You carried them both. You didn't get to choose. At Robert's house, the kitchen smelled like garlic and cumin and something underneath that was older, deeper. The ghost of Rebecca's recipes. Robert had learned them all after she died. Not from a cookbook, from memory. From watching her cook for 10 years and paying attention the way operators pay attention, cataloging details without knowing why until the reason reveals itself. He still set 3 places at the table, had done it every night since Rebecca passed. Ethan had asked him about it once, and Robert had said, "She's still family. Dead doesn't mean gone." They ate mostly in silence. The good kind. The kind that doesn't need to be filled because the silence itself is the conversation. Fort Bragg, Robert said eventually, pushing his plate back. That's the right choice. You really think so? I know so. You've proven you can operate. 47 missions, 15 years. Nobody questions your ability to do the job. Robert poured himself a glass of water, took a slow drink. But you haven't proven you can teach the next generation to be better than you are. That's the real challenge. That's the one that matters. How many operators did you train? Over 20 years? 312. And how many of them went on to lead teams? Most of them. Some became instructors themselves. Some made flag rank. Some died. Robert's voice caught on the last word. Just barely. Just enough for Ethan to hear. But every one of them carried something I gave them. A way of thinking. A way of making decisions. And every life they saved, every operator they brought home, every good call they made under fire. That was my legacy. Not the missions I ran, not the enemies I killed. The people I taught. That's multiplication. That's immortality, Robert said. Not in being remembered. In the lessons that echo forward forever. You teach one operator to think correctly under pressure. That operator teaches 10 more. Those 10 teach 100. Somewhere, decades from now, there'll be a commander who makes the right call in an impossible situation. And he'll make that call because his instructor taught him. And his instructor learned from someone you taught. And you learned from me. And I learned from the men who came before me. Robert's eyes were wet. Not crying, just full. The way a river gets full in spring. Not overflowing, just holding more than usual. That's what you're going to build at Fort Bragg, son. Not just a course. A lineage. Ethan's phone rang. He almost didn't answer. The caller ID showed a number he didn't recognize. But something, instinct maybe, or the same operational awareness that had kept him alive for 15 years, told him to pick up. Commander Cole? A woman's voice, older, steady but with cracks running through it like a windshield after an impact. This is Elena Hayes. Captain Elena Hayes, Michael's wife. Ethan's breath stopped. Mrs. Hayes, ma'am, Please don't apologize. Not to me, not to anyone. That's not why I'm calling. Ethan gripped the phone harder. Robert was watching him, reading the conversation from his son's face the way he'd always been able to. I've been watching the news, Elena said. Reading the articles. The pundits questioning your judgment. Analysts debating whether you cracked in Yemen. Opinion pieces about whether single fathers should command combat units. I've been trying not to read those. Good. They're garbage. Every single one. Her voice strengthened, hardened. The voice of a military wife who'd buried her husband and come out the other side, not broken, but forged. My husband's last letter talked about you, Commander. 3 pages. Michael wasn't a man who wrote 3-page letters about anything. But he wrote 3 pages about you. Ethan closed his eyes. He said you were the best commander he'd ever served under. He said you made decisions based on keeping the team alive, not on ego or career advancement. He said you listened to your operators like they were people, not chess pieces. And he said... Elena's voice broke, just for a moment, then rebuilt itself. He said if anything ever happened to him, it would be because of bad luck or bad intelligence. Never bad leadership. Never because his commander made the wrong call. Mrs. Hayes, I'm not finished. The firmness came back. The day after Michael died, my very first thought after they told me, was thank God it was Commander Cole. Because I knew. I knew that if Michael died under your command, it meant the situation was truly impossible. It meant you'd tried everything. It meant you'd exhausted every option before you let the mission go. I did, Ethan whispered. I tried everything. I know you did.
And the three men who came home, Jackson, Kim, Williams. They're alive because you had the courage to say no more when any other commander would have pushed forward and lost everyone. She paused. Michael's death destroyed me, Commander. I won't pretend it didn't. But knowing you brought 3 men home, knowing you chose lives over mission, it helps. Because it means my husband's death wasn't wasted on a commander who would have spent all 6 of them for a target that might not have been there. Ethan couldn't speak. His jaw was locked. His eyes burned. Tears ran down his face, and he didn't wipe them because he was holding the phone with one hand and gripping the edge of the kitchen table with the other, holding on, just holding on. I'm calling, Elena continued, because whatever the media says, whatever the Pentagon says, whatever anyone says, you made the right call. And if they pushed you out over it, the SEALs wouldn't deserve you. Thank you, ma'am. I don't. And one more thing. Admiral Garrett told me you're considering the teaching position, Fort Bragg. I accepted it tonight. Good. Elena's voice softened, warmed. Teach them, Commander. Teach the next generation what Michael learned from you. Make his death count for something by making sure future operators come home to their families, to their wives, to their kids. I will. I promise you that. I believe you. Michael believed you. That's enough for me. After Elena hung up, Ethan sat in his father's kitchen and cried. Not the quiet, controlled tears of a man managing his emotions. Real tears. The kind that come from the chest, that shake the shoulders, that sound like something between breathing and breaking. The tears of a man who had been carrying 3 coffins for 3 weeks and had just been given permission, by the one person whose permission actually mattered, to set them down. Not to forget. Never to forget. But to carry them differently. To carry them forward instead of just carrying them. Robert didn't say anything, didn't offer platitudes, didn't try to fix it. He walked around the table, put his arms around his son, and held him. The way he'd held him when Ethan was 6 and scared of thunderstorms. The way he'd held him when Rebecca died and the world stopped making sense. The way fathers hold sons when the weight gets too heavy for one set of shoulders. Ethan cried until there was nothing left. Then he breathed. Deep, slow, steady. I'm okay, he said. I know you are. I'm going to be a good instructor, Dad. You're going to be a great one. Because you know what it costs. You know what the wrong call looks like. You know what the right call feels like. And you know it doesn't feel good. It just feels necessary. That's what you're going to teach them. Ethan wiped his face, took a breath, looked around the kitchen. The 3 place settings, the recipes on index cards in Rebecca's handwriting pinned to the corkboard, the photo on the fridge of Lily on her first day of kindergarten, gap-toothed and beaming in the yellow dress her mother would never see her outgrow. I need to pick Lily up in the morning, Ethan said. I know. She's going to ask me what I did tonight. What are you going to tell her? Ethan thought about it. About the tunnel, and the bar, and the 8 seconds, and the letters, and the families, and the 12 hostages who were, right now, in their own homes, holding their own families, breathing their own air because a single dad in a hoodie had crawled through darkness to reach them. I'm going to tell her that Daddy helped some people. And then I'm going to make her pancakes. Robert smiled. The real one. The one that had gotten rarer over the years, but never disappeared entirely. She likes them burned on one side.
I know.
She won't let me flip them. Good, don't let her. Some things are more important than getting it perfect. Ethan drove home, let himself into the empty house that wasn't really empty, because Lily's drawings were on every wall, and her shoes were by the door, and her cereal bowl from breakfast was still in the sink because he'd been too tired to wash it and too sentimental to move it. He went to her room, stood in the doorway. Her bed was made. She'd done it herself before the sleepover, proud and serious about it. Mr. Pickles' backup bear, Mr. Pickles Jr., sat on the pillow, standing guard. On her nightstand, a crayon drawing. Stick figures, a tall one and a small one, holding hands. The tall one had a pink rectangle on its back, the backpack. Above them, in 6-year-old handwriting that made the letters different sizes, "My daddy is the bravest." Ethan picked up the drawing, held it, looked at it for a long time. Then he went to his own room and lay down on the bed. He didn't change clothes, didn't brush his teeth, didn't set an alarm because his body would wake him at 5:30 the way it always did, the way 15 years of military service had programmed it to. He closed his eyes. For the first time in 3 weeks, he didn't see Yemen, didn't see Chen's face, or hear Hayes calling for a medic, or watch Rodriguez stop breathing. Instead, he saw 12 people walking out of a building. He saw Bull Donovan's shoulders straightening as the lies fell away. He saw his father's eyes, wet and proud. He saw Elena Hayes's words on the back of his eyelids. Make his death count for something. And he saw Lily, yellow dress, gap-toothed smile, burned pancakes, Mr. Pickles. He slept, deep and dreamless, the sleep of a man who had finally stopped drowning and remembered how to float. At 6:47 the next morning, Ethan rang Jessica's doorbell. The door opened, and Lily launched herself at him like a guided missile locked onto the only target that mattered. "Daddy!" He caught her, lifted her, held her against his chest, and breathed in the smell of her hair, strawberry shampoo, and sleep, and something that was just Lily, just his daughter, just the reason he was alive and standing and breathing and choosing to carry the weight instead of letting it crush him. "Hey, baby girl. How was the sleepover?" "It was so good, Daddy. We watched a movie and ate popcorn, and Jessica's mom let us stay up until 9. 9, Daddy." "Wow, that's practically midnight." "I know." She pulled back, looked at his face. Her eyes, Rebecca's eyes, dark brown, serious when they needed to be, found the split lip. "Daddy, what happened to your mouth?" "I bumped into something." "Does it hurt?" "Not anymore." She kissed his lip, gently, the way she kissed her stuffed animals when they fell off the bed. "There," she said. "All better." Ethan's throat closed. He held her tighter. "Yeah," he said. "All better." "Daddy, did you have a good night? Did you do something fun?" He thought about the bar, the tunnel, the 8 seconds, the letters from families of dead men, the offer that would shape the rest of his life, the crying in his father's kitchen, the first good sleep in 3 weeks. "I helped some people, Lily." "That's what heroes do," she said, matter of fact, the way children state truths that adults have forgotten. "You think Daddy's a hero?" She looked at him like he'd asked if the sky was blue. "Daddy, you're the bravest person in the whole world. I told Mr. Pickles, and he said so too." Ethan carried her to the truck, strapped her into her car seat, handed her the pink backpack. Pete had given it back to him that morning, waiting outside the Anchor's Rest at 6 a.m. with the backpack in one hand and a cup of coffee in the other, saying nothing except,
Give that little girl a hug from an old Navy corpsman. Lily clutched the backpack, pulled out her math homework, showed him the smiley face sticker.
Look, Daddy, I got a great job.
I see that. I'm proud of you.
Are you going to put it on the fridge?
Absolutely. Front and center. She beamed. And Ethan drove home with his daughter's voice filling the truck, talking about popcorn and movies and what she wanted for breakfast. And he listened to every word, the way he listened to mission briefings, with his full attention, because the details mattered, because the small things were the real things, because this was the mission that mattered most. 2 weeks later, they packed the truck together. Lily insisted on helping. She carried her own suitcase, the small purple one with wheels, across the driveway, with the concentration and determination of a 6-year-old who was absolutely certain she was doing important work. "Fort Bragg," she said, testing the words. "That's where we're going?" "That's where we're going."
Is it far?
"Pretty far, but we'll be together."
Will there be a school?
"There will."
Will they have art class?
"I'll make sure of it." She nodded, satisfied. Then she looked up at him with Rebecca's eyes.
Daddy, what are you going to do at Fort Bragg?
"I'm going to teach people."
Teach them what?
Ethan knelt down, so he was eye level with his daughter. The morning sun was warm. The truck was packed. San Diego was behind them, and Fort Bragg was ahead, and in between was 3,000 miles of road that father and daughter would drive together, stopping at diners and gas stations and rest stops where Lily would insist on counting every state license plate she could find. "I'm going to teach them how to make hard choices," he said. "The kind of choices where there's no perfect answer, just the best one you can find. Like when I had to choose between the unicorn backpack and the butterfly one?" Ethan smiled. "Exactly like that, but bigger." "That was really hard, Daddy." "I know it was, sweetheart."
The hard ones always are.
Fort Bragg's Special Warfare Center was massive. Thousands of acres of training ground that had forged the military's most elite operators for decades. Army Special Forces, Rangers, the best of the best. And now Ethan Cole was here to teach them. His first class was Advanced Tactical Decision-Making Under Pressure. 45 students, 42 men, 3 women, ages 25 to 42. Career operators, every one of them. Combat veterans, decorated, experienced. And every single one of them was looking at their new instructor with the same expression. Skepticism layered over curiosity, layered over the unspoken question that hung in the room like smoke. Who the hell is this guy? Ethan didn't start with credentials, didn't introduce himself with his service record, or his 47 operations, or his kill count, or his clearance level.
A captain from the 75th Rangers slammed his hand on his desk, arguing for completion. A Marine major shot back that dead operators don't complete anything. Then Ethan stopped them. "I'll tell you what happened." He clicked to the next slide. A photo of a young man in desert fatigues, strong jaw, steady eyes, the kind of face that looked like it had been carved for a recruiting poster. "My father, Master Chief Robert Cole, 1991. He chose extraction, saved 6 men, was court-martialed for abandoning the mission. Cleared, because pushing forward would have killed them all." Silence. Next slide. A photo Ethan hadn't looked at in weeks, because looking at it cost something he wasn't always sure he could afford. 3 men in tactical gear, smiling in front of a military helicopter. Chen, Hayes, Rodriguez. Yemen. 3 weeks before I stood in front of you. Same scenario. My team. My operators. 3 dead, 3 alive. I chose extraction. Aborted the mission. Naval Command investigated whether I was a coward. He pulled up an archived document. Admiral Garrett's verdict. Redacted for classification, but clear in its conclusion. Investigation closed. Cleared. Not because I was right. There's no right answer to an impossible choice. Cleared because I made the decision that preserved lives over an objective that was already compromised. A hand went up. Captain Eric Morrison, 38, Army Ranger, 15 years of service. Ethan had read his file. 3 silver stars, 2 deployments to Afghanistan. The kind of operator who'd earned the right to challenge anyone in the room, including his instructor. "Commander, with respect, the intelligence objective was lost. You didn't get the target. 3 men died and the mission failed. How do you justify that?" "I don't justify it, Captain. I accept it. 3 families have sons and brothers and fathers because I chose people over mission. 3 other families buried loved ones because I couldn't save them. Both of those things are true. Both of them matter. I live with both of them, every day." Another hand. Lieutenant Sarah Chen, no relation to his fallen corporal, but the name still hit him like a fist every time he said it. 26. Army officer. Sharp eyes. The kind of sharp that came from being underestimated her entire career, and using that underestimation as a weapon. "Commander Cole, the media coverage after the Coronado incident suggested Pentagon sources questioned your competence. Did that affect your decision to take this position?" "The media says what the media says. I can't control that. What I can control is what happens in this room. And what happens in this room is that you learn to make decisions based on tactical reality, not on what looks good in a headline or what protects your career." "How do we learn that?" "By getting it wrong. By arguing. By studying every scenario I put in front of you, and discovering that the answer you were sure was right is sometimes the one that gets people killed." Ethan looked at the room. "I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'm here to teach you how to think. Under fire. Under pressure. When the intel is wrong, and the clock is running, and lives are in your hands, and there is no good option, only the least terrible one." Class continued for 3 hours. Ethan presented scenario after scenario, drawn from his own operations, from his father's career, from classified case studies that most of these operators would never access on their own. He let them debate, let them argue, let them be wrong. And then he showed them what happened in reality, and watched the lessons land. After class, Morrison approached the desk. Up close, he was bigger than he'd looked from the 3rd row. Hard-jawed, serious. The handshake was firm enough to test. "Commander, I'll be honest. When I saw a 34-year-old teaching this course, I figured politics. Figured the Navy was putting someone young and photogenic in front of a camera to look progressive.
And now? Now I think that was the most valuable tactical training I've had in 5 years, and I've been to every school the Army offers. Thank you, Captain. One more thing, Morrison hesitated. The hesitation of a proud man about to say something that cost him. That scenario, the extraction call. I said push forward. I was wrong, and I've been wrong about that for 15 years. I've always believed you honor the fallen by finishing the mission. But you're right. You honor the fallen by bringing the living home. That's not an easy thing to say out loud. No, sir, it's not. More students approached after Morrison. Questions, challenges, disagreements delivered with respect.
Ethan spent 2 hours after class doing exactly what his father had done for 20 years. Teaching operators to think, not just act. To question, not just execute. To understand that the hardest call was usually the quietest one, and that silence took more discipline than shouting. 6 months passed, class after class. Ethan taught them all: advanced tactical decision-making, close quarters battle, hostage rescue, crisis management. Each class brought new students, new opportunities to pass on lessons that had cost lives to learn. Lily started first grade at Fort Bragg's Bay School. She made friends fast. The daughter of a Ranger captain, the son of a Special Forces Master Sergeant. Military kids. Kids who understood that sometimes Daddy left, and you didn't know when he'd be back. Kids who knew what a deployment calendar looked like, and what a folded flag meant. She drew pictures every week and put them in Ethan's tactical binder. Right next to the operational maps and threat assessments, between the satellite imagery and the intelligence summaries, there were crayon drawings of a tall stick figure and a small stick figure holding hands. Every single one labeled, "My daddy is the bravest." One morning, Ethan walked into his classroom and found someone sitting in the back row. Last seat, corner, trying to take up as little space as possible, which was difficult because the man was 6'3" and built like a refrigerator. Gunnery Sergeant Marcus Bull Donovan. He didn't raise his hand during class, didn't speak, didn't challenge, just listened, took notes, absorbed everything like a man dying of thirst who'd finally found water and was too grateful to waste a drop. After class, the room emptied and Bull approached the desk. He moved differently now. The swagger was gone. The volume was gone. What remained was something quieter and more honest. The posture of a man who'd spent 6 months at Quantico, dismantling everything he'd built, and was still figuring out what to put in its place. "Commander, Gunnery Sergeant, long way from Quantico. Wanted you to know, 6 months, 180 recruits. Every one of them heard about the night at the Anchor's Rest. How's it going?" Bull was quiet for a moment. "Hard. Harder than I thought. 16 years of assumptions don't come out easy. They're woven into everything. How I talk, how I lead, how I look at people. Every day I catch myself making the same judgments I made about you. And every day I have to stop and say, you were wrong about the best operator you've ever seen. You might be wrong about this person too. That's the work. I know, and I'm doing it." Bull met his eyes. "Every recruit hears your story. Not the version where I look like an idiot, though that's what it is. The version where I learn, where I tell them I kicked a SEAL commander to the floor of a bar because he was carrying his daughter's pink backpack, and I decided that made him weak." How do they respond? Half of them don't believe it at first, think it's a hypothetical. Then I show them the body camera footage from the tunnel. I show them your record. I tell them what you told me, that the hardest fight is the one you walk away from. That your 6-year-old daughter needed a father with a career more than you needed to prove you could beat me.
Does it change them? Some, maybe half. But that's half going into the fleet who won't make the assumptions I made. Half who might listen when the quiet person in the room has a better plan. Half who'll think twice before deciding someone doesn't belong based on what they look like or what they carry. Bull paused. That's because of you, Commander. Because you didn't just beat me. You taught me. You gave me a path back.
After Bull left, Ethan sat in the empty classroom and thought about something his father had said the night everything changed. About ripples. About stones dropped in water creating waves that travel farther than you can see. His phone buzzed. A text from Staff Sergeant Jake Davis. The young Lance Corporal from that night at the Anchor's Rest, the one who'd asked Bull, "Who the hell is he?" had moved up, made Marine Raider selection. Now training at Fort Bragg under instructors Ethan had trained. Commander Cole, applying for Fort Bragg instructor position. Want to teach what you taught me? My father was Army Ranger, served under Master Chief Cole in 91 extraction. Came home safe from 3 deployments because of what your father taught his commander. Want to pass that forward. Ethan stared at the message. Read it twice, 3 times. Then he called Master Chief Reeves, his career counselor at Naval Special Warfare. Reeves, I'm staying at Fort Bragg, requesting a 2-year extension beyond my current rotation. Reeves was quiet. You serious? Team 7's been holding the XO position for you. Wilson asks about you every week. I can do more good here right now than I can in the field. The Navy's going to push back. They want you operational. You're the best they've got. Then they'll develop someone else. That's the whole point of what I'm doing here. I'm not building a course, Reeves. I'm building a pipeline. Operators who think before they shoot. Commanders who choose lives over objectives. A generation of leaders who understand that the quiet call saves more people than the loud one. And Lily? How's she doing with you being stateside? Ethan looked at the crayon drawing taped inside his binder. The tall stick figure and the small one, holding hands. She's doing great. She's where she needs to be. So am I. Garrett called the next day. Commander, I hear you want to extend your teaching rotation. Yes, sir. I also hear Team 7 offered you XO, and you turned it down. Yes, sir. Explain. Sir, I spent 15 years proving I can operate. 47 missions, hard calls, earned my trident, earned my reputation. But I haven't proven I can build the next generation. And that's the harder job. That's the one that multiplies. The Navy needs operational commanders. The Navy needs both, sir. Every operator I train goes back to their unit carrying lessons about quiet competence, about tactical humility, about choosing lives over ego. That affects hundreds of operations I'll never see. That's a force multiplier beyond anything I could achieve leading one team. Your father said the exact same thing to me in '96. I know, he told me. Best decision he ever made. Garrett paused. Approved. 2-year extension. But Commander, when those 2 years are up, you're coming back to operations. No arguments. Yes, sir. And Cole, I want you to know something. In 35 years of commanding special operators, I've had 2 men turn down Team 7XO to teach instead. Your father was the first. You're the second. And I think you're both the smartest sons of bitches I've ever had the privilege of serving with. 2 years at Fort Bragg became the most important 2 years of Ethan's career. 847 students. Operators from every branch. Army, Navy, Marines, Air Force Special Tactics. They came skeptical and left changed. Not because Ethan was the loudest voice in the room. Because he was the most honest. Lily grew. 1st grade became 2nd grade. She lost more teeth, gained more friends, drew more pictures. She learned to ride a bike on the base, with Ethan running beside her, one hand on the seat, shouting encouragement until the moment she found her balance and pedaled away from him, and he stood in the road watching her go, with the same mixture of pride and terror that every father feels when his child starts moving through the world without him. One evening, his phone rang. A text from Lieutenant Sarah Chen. "Commander Cole, just made first command decision under fire. Had to choose between mission objective and operator safety. Chose operators. Mission incomplete. Everyone home safe. My CO questioned me. I told him what you taught me. Mission is temporary. People are permanent." He backed off. "Thank you for giving me permission to make the right call." Ethan replied, "You didn't need my permission, Lieutenant. You had the courage already. I just showed you the door. You walked through it." Another text, weeks later, from one of Bull's Quantico recruits, now deployed to the Pacific. "Sir, you don't know me, but Gunnery Sergeant Donovan told us your story in basic. Tonight I was on patrol, and my team lead made a bad call. I spoke up, quietly, offered a different approach. He listened. We avoided an ambush that would have killed 4 of us. Donovan said the quiet voice in the room is usually the right one. He was right. Thank you, sir." And another, months after that, from a Special Forces captain Ethan had taught in his first Fort Bragg class. "Commander, just finished my first deployment as team commander. Brought everyone home. Every decision I made, I heard your voice in my head. What's the call you can live with?" That question saved lives tonight. My team's lives. I owe you, sir. Ethan read each message, saved each one. Kept them in a folder on his phone next to photos of Lily. The ripples were spreading. He couldn't see where they ended. No one ever could. That was the point. On his last day at Fort Bragg, the classroom was packed, standing room only. Students from 2 years of classes had come back for his final lecture. 847 operators who'd sat in these seats and argued about impossible choices, and learned that the right answer was never the easy one. Lily sat in the front row, 7 years old now, quiet and serious, in a yellow dress that was new because she'd outgrown all the old ones. She'd asked if she could come. Ethan had said yes without hesitation. "This is my last class," he said. "Next week I'm returning to SEAL Team 7 as executive officer, going back to operations." He paused, looked at the room, at the faces he knew and the faces he'd shaped, and the faces that would go on to shape others he'd never meet. "But before I go, I want to tell you what I learned here. Not what I taught you, what I learned." He clicked to a photo, his father, young, desert fatigues, standing with a SEAL team in Iraq, 1991. The photo that had started everything. 33 years ago, my father made a choice. Extraction over mission. Saved his team, was court-martialed, cleared. Then he spent 20 years teaching. 312 operators. Every one of them carries his lessons. Next photo. Ethan in Yemen. Chen, Hayes, Rodriguez, alive and smiling in the background. Taken 4 days before the ambush. 4 days before everything changed. 3 weeks before I started here, I made the same choice. Lost 3. Saved 3. Was investigated. Cleared. For the same reason. Because lives matter more than objectives. He looked at Lily. She was watching him with Rebecca's eyes. Steady. Trusting. Completely certain that her father was exactly who she believed him to be. When I started teaching, I thought my job was to transfer tactical knowledge. How to breach, how to plan, how to execute. And I did that. But what I actually learned, what 2 years and 847 of you taught me, is that teaching isn't about knowledge transfer.
It's about permission. He paused, let the words settle. Permission to be quiet professionals in a loud world. Permission to value tactics over performance. Permission to make the hard call even when it costs you. Permission to walk away from a fight you could win because winning isn't always the point. He clicked to one more photo, the pink backpack. Lily's unicorn backpack, the one Bull had mocked, the one that had been sitting in the booth next to him when everything started. 2 years ago, a man kicked me to the floor of a bar because I was carrying this backpack. My daughter's backpack. He decided it made me weak. Decided a man with a pink unicorn bag didn't belong in a place for warriors. Ethan smiled. That same night, I crawled through a tunnel and saved 12 lives. And that man, Gunnery Sergeant Marcus Donovan, is now teaching recruits at Quantico that the most dangerous person in any room might be the one you'd never expect. The quiet one. The tired one. The one carrying a child's backpack. He closed the laptop. Class dismissed. Go save lives. Teach others to save lives. And when you face the impossible choice, and you will, remember that the right call isn't the loud one. It's the one you can live with. The room stood. Every operator. 847 men and women who'd been forged in this classroom by a single dad with a split lip and 72 beats per minute. They didn't clap at first. They just stood, in silence, the way military professionals honor something that matters too much for noise. Then the applause came, and it didn't stop for a long time. After everyone filed out, Lily walked up to the front of the room. She took Ethan's hand, looked up at him.
Daddy, why were they clapping?
Because class is over, sweetheart.
Did you teach them good things?
I tried.
I think you did. She squeezed his hand. Mr. Pickles thinks so too.
They walked out together, father and daughter. In the hallway, Robert was waiting. 63 now, a little grayer, a little slower. But his eyes were the same, tracking, assessing, seeing everything. How'd it go? Robert asked. Packed room, standing ovation. Good. You earned it. We earned it. Everything I taught them came from you. No, Robert shook his head. Everything you taught them came from you. I gave you the foundation. You built the building. He looked down at Lily. Hey, sweetheart.
Hi, Grandpa. Daddy made people cry.
Robert laughed. The real laugh. The one that came from somewhere deep and warm and permanent. That's because your daddy tells the truth, and the truth makes people feel things.
Is that good?
That's the best thing there is. They drove to Robert's house that night. 3 hours. Lily fell asleep in the back seat with Mr. Pickles tucked under her chin and her pink backpack wedged beside her like a shield. Ethan kept checking the rearview mirror, watching her sleep, watching her breathe, reminding himself that this small, perfect, sleeping person was the reason he'd stayed on that bar floor. The reason he hadn't broken Bull Donovan in half. The reason he'd chosen teaching over glory, and patience over speed, and carrying weight over setting it down. At the house, Robert cooked. Rebecca's recipes. The kitchen smelled like garlic and cumin and home. Lily woke up just long enough to eat 3 bites of rice and say, "This is Mommy's food," before falling asleep again at the table. Ethan carried her to bed, tucked her in, placed Mr. Pickles beside her, stood in the doorway and watched her breathe. Robert appeared behind him. She looks like Rebecca when she sleeps. I know. You did good, Ethan. Not just tonight. Not just Fort Bragg. All of it. Yemen. The tunnel. Choosing to teach. choosing to stay down when every instinct told you to fight back. Robert put a hand on his son's shoulder. You know what your mother would say? What? She'd say her boys figured it out. Both of them. Took you long enough, but you figured it out. They went back to the kitchen, cleaned up together, the same way they'd done it Ethan's whole life. Robert washing, Ethan drying, moving around each other with the practiced rhythm of two people who'd shared a kitchen for decades. Dad, Ethan said, when you were investigated in 91, were you scared? Terrified. Thought my career was over. Thought I'd let everyone down. What got you through it? Robert dried his hands, leaned against the counter. Garrett. He was the JAG officer at my hearing. After the verdict came in, after they cleared me, he pulled me aside and said something I've never forgotten. What did he say? He said, Master Chief, the men who never face court-martial are the men who never make hard choices. You did something difficult. You did something costly. The question isn't whether you made the perfect choice. The question is whether you made the right one. And you did. That's what got you through? That's what got me to Fort Bragg. That's what made me a teacher. Because I realized that the right choice doesn't announce itself. It doesn't come with music and applause. It comes quiet. It comes with cost. And the only way to prepare the next generation for that moment is to stand in front of them and tell the truth about what it feels like to make it. Ethan was quiet for a long time. I made the right choice in Yemen, he said. Not a question, a statement, but one that still needed to be said out loud, in this kitchen, to this man. You did. And tonight, Fort Bragg, teaching instead of operating. Right choice. And the bar, staying down, letting Bull, the hardest right choice of all. Robert's eyes were bright. Because that one didn't just save your career, it saved Bull Donovan's, and the 180 recruits he's trained, and every person those recruits will ever lead. You stayed on that floor, and 1,000 people are better for it. I stayed on that floor because of Lily. I know. That's what makes it real. It wasn't about tactics or strategy. It was about a father protecting his daughter's future. That's the purest form of courage there is. They stood in the kitchen, father and son, and the silence between them was full. Full of 33 years of parallel choices. Full of 312 students and 847 more. Full of Chen and Hayes and Rodriguez and Parks and every ghost that traveled with the Cole bloodline. Not as punishment, but as responsibility. Not as weight, but as anchor. Dad, Ethan said. Thank you. For what? For teaching me that the quiet choice is usually the right one. For showing me that bringing people home matters more than finishing the mission. For cooking Mom's food every night and setting 3 places at the table. For raising me to be the kind of man who carries a pink backpack into a bar full of warriors and doesn't apologize for it. Robert's jaw worked. His eyes filled. He didn't fight it, didn't hide it, just let it happen. The way he taught his son to let things happen. Feel them, acknowledge them, carry them. You know what I'm most proud of? Robert said, his voice rough. It's not the missions, not the students, not the career. What? That little girl in there. Robert nodded toward the bedroom where Lily slept. She told me last week, she said, Grandpa, when I grow up, I want to help people like Daddy does. And I asked her what Daddy does. You know what she said? What? She said, Daddy teaches people how to be brave, and he carries my backpack. And he never lets anybody be mean. And he makes really good pancakes, but only on one side. Ethan laughed. Really laughed. The sound was real and warm, and it filled the kitchen the way Rebecca's cooking used to fill it. The way Lily's voice filled it on Sunday mornings. The way love fills a space when you stop trying to contain it and just let it be. "She's right about the pancakes," Ethan said. "She's right about all of it." The next morning, Ethan loaded the truck. Lily strapped herself in. She could do the buckle by herself now. Another small independence that made him proud and terrified in equal measure. Robert stood in the driveway with his hands in his pockets and the San Diego sun on his face. "Call me when you get back to 7, Robert said. "I will."
And Ethan, when they send you somewhere dark, somewhere hard, somewhere that tests everything I taught you and everything you taught those 847 kids. I know, Dad. Say it anyway. For me. Ethan looked at his father. Master Chief Robert Cole, retired. 312 operators. A court-martial and a clearing, and the lifetime of quiet competence that had echoed forward through decades and would keep echoing long after both of them were gone. "I'll make the right call. Not the loud one, the right one. And I'll bring everyone home." Robert nodded, tapped the truck's hood twice. Their old signal. Go. Ethan drove. Lily talked. She talked about Fort Bragg and her friends and Mr. Pickles and whether they could get a dog and what kind of dog and could the dog sleep in her bed? And also, she wanted to learn karate. He listened to every word, because the details mattered, because the small things were the real things, because 15 years of operating and 2 years of teaching had taught him one truth that mattered more than all the others combined. The mission that counts most is the one sleeping in the back seat, clutching a stuffed bear, dreaming about dogs and karate, and a father who always comes home. 3 months later, a challenge coin arrived at the Team 7 compound, custom made. On one side, a seal trident. On the other, an inscription. Lieutenant Commander Ethan Cole, teacher, leader, quiet professional. From the operators whose lives you saved by teaching their commanders to be better. Underneath, a letter, signed by 847 names. Commander Cole, you taught us that volume doesn't equal valor, that quiet competence saves lives, that the man carrying a pink backpack might be the most dangerous and most disciplined person in the room, that bringing people home matters more than any mission. You saved our lives in the classroom. Now save the lives of operators we'll never meet by continuing to teach their leaders what we learned from you. Ethan placed the coin on his desk, next to a photo of Chen, Hayes, and Rodriguez, next to Lily's latest crayon drawing, a stick figure in a green uniform with a pink rectangle on its back, standing in front of a classroom full of smaller stick figures, all of them smiling. The caption in careful second-grade handwriting. My daddy teaches people to be brave, and he is the best. He looked at it for a long time. Then he put on his gear, picked up his weapon, and walked to the briefing room where 22 operators waited. Some had served with him before. Some had been his students. All of them knew what mattered. Listen up, Ethan said. His voice was quiet. It carried. We're deploying in 48 hours. I'll brief you on the details shortly, but first, one rule. The only rule that matters. He looked at them. Every face. Every set of eyes. Operators who would follow him into the darkest places on Earth because they trusted him, because he'd earned it, because he'd proven it in a tunnel and a classroom, and on the floor of a bar where he chose his daughter over his pride. We all come home. Mission matters, but people matter more. Clear? 22 voices, one word. Clear. Ethan nodded, opened the briefing folder, and outside, in the parking lot, a pink unicorn backpack sat on the passenger seat of his truck,
right next to a tactical binder full of satellite imagery and intelligence reports, and one crayon drawing of a tall stick figure, holding hands with a small one. Because Ethan Cole was a SEAL commander and a single father, and a teacher, and a son, and a quiet professional who would change the world, not by being the loudest voice in the room, but by being the steadiest. Not by winning every fight, but by knowing which fights to walk away from. Not by proving he was the most dangerous man in any bar, any briefing room, any battlefield, but by proving that the most dangerous man could also be the most gentle, the most patient, the most willing to get knocked down and stand back up, and choose his daughter's future over his own fists. And somewhere in San Diego, in a bar called the Anchor's Rest, Pete Whitman was telling the story to anyone who'd listen. The story of a tired single dad with a pink backpack who got kicked to the floor by the loudest man in the room and didn't fight back. Who crawled through a tunnel and saved 12 lives. Who chose teaching over glory and patience over violence. And a 6-year-old girl named Lily over everything else in the world. "You want to know what a real warrior looks like?" Pete would say, pouring a beer for whoever was listening. "A real warrior doesn't need you to know he's dangerous. A real warrior carries his daughter's unicorn backpack into a room full of men who think strength is about volume and size and swagger. And when those men knock him down, a real warrior stands up, wipes the blood off his lip, and goes and saves their lives anyway. The quiet professional, the single dad, the man with 72 beats per minute and a promise to a little girl that he would always come home. That was the story Pete told, and it was the truest story he'd ever heard. And the ripple never stopped.